Okay, we'll call the meeting to order, the executive meeting of council. This is a few days later than the schedule because there was a reason why we couldn't hold it on the last Thursday. So regrets, we have our deputy warden, Albright, sent her regrets. And on the agenda, you always see invitation to stand and move whenever you feel like it. Just go ahead and do that. It's sometimes it's tiring to be sitting for a long time. So we have minutes of January the 12th regular council meeting. Have you all had a chance to look at them? And if so, are there any errors or omissions? Oh, we don't approve the agenda. That's right. I skipped the agenda. Sorry. So are there any additions from anybody? Okay. We have Councillor D'Entremont.
Okay, thank you, Warden. The district committee grant for the Village Historique Acadia de Nouvelle-Écosse. So you put that under financial requests for a community district grant.
Okay. And that'll be with the rest of the.
Thank you.
And I see Councillor Surratt.
Yes, I'd like to add on it, but I don't know if this would fit in when I don't know if it'll fit in, or I should add it on when it comes to the quarterly financial report. But I wanted a little discussion on the assessment going up this year. So maybe, I don't know which item you'd like to put it on.
Can we do that during the finance
Yes,
reports?
works for me.
Would be okay with that, and it could fit in there anyway. It's kind of the same.
Perfect.
If you don't mind.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just bring it up at the time.
I will.
Okay. Any conflict of interest? You can always declare it at the time. Now, the adoption of minutes. We have January the 12th, regular council meeting. Are there any errors or omissions? Hearing none, the minutes stand approved as presented. And we also have the minutes of January the 18th, special council. Any errors or omissions on that one? Seeing none, those minutes stand approved as presented. We have the quarterly finance report, the operating funds. We had a presentation on that. Are there any questions on that to the CAO? Councillor Digdon.
Thank you. I should have hooked it on the special council meeting minutes, please. It says that I was absent, but actually I was online on that one.
That's correct. And if Chantal is hearing that, she can add that to the minutes. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, sounds good.
Thank you.
So no questions on the first. No questions on the operating funds. Now, do we go over this again with the percentage, what we just presented? We don't need that.
No, sorry.
Unless there's questions, there's questions on it.
The residents can certainly go and sorry.
residents can certainly go and look at the financial information, and we'd be happy to provide any additional information, but we're not going to go line by line on the
No,
on the meeting.
exactly.
If there are any questions generally about assessments to the point that Councillor Surratt
Right.
just said, we can do it here, or we can do it before we go to number 7.
That's right.
Whatever your preference.
Because we also have the capital reserve that we didn't go over. So maybe you can give us I don't know what's wrong with this thing, but I can't, this slide is not coming on. There we go. Go ahead.
But just very briefly, happy to present this on behalf of the Director of Finance. She presented earlier to you just in a special meeting in a bit more detail. We didn't get to this part, so I'll just go quickly. So what we've done here is we've split your capital reserve in 2 different funds. Your first one is your capital reserve budget. That's I think that's all things other than gas tax, I think, would be the best way to describe that. So that includes all of the projects that would be funded for either by your own money or other funds other than gas tax. That's in your first column and your second column. So your first column has the budget and the second column has your actuals. Keep in mind that there's no prorating of the budget. This budget's for the full year, and the actuals are for 3/4 of the year. So if they're behind, well, they should be because they're not for the full year. In some cases, you'll find that they're complete, and I'll talk very quickly on the projects. The last 2 columns are the gas tax budget and actuals. What you will find in every case is that always comes to 0. So while the capital reserve can lose or make money, the gas tax, the money it collects and doesn't spend, it does not show as revenue. It just goes in the bank account. It only shows when it's spent. That's why it's always 0. What goes in doesn't always come out. When it comes out, it goes in. That makes any sense. So sometimes it has to wait for the bucket to empty, and the bucket is the expense, right? So when that expense occurs, the revenue comes in to offset it. So that's how the accounting of that works. That's the PSAB, or the Public Service Accounting Standards that we follow. Very quickly, I'll go over some of the major projects, quickly talk about which ones are completed. I'll start with those. The rural internet is complete. We're just waiting the last 10% to pay out. It's essentially completed. Bell has not charged us the last 10% on that fee, but they've essentially virtually completed their work. The Comfit East Pumlico project is completed, and as you can see, is almost right on the budget. There's an extra $340 there. I don't know what we're going to do with, but that was a joke. Anyway, so the East Pumlico Comfit project is completed, and it is generating energy revenue for you right now. The third completion is the J.E. Hadfield construction. That is the extension of the road and the paving of the road. We have established that extension in phases. So if you recall, phase 1 would be to bring it where Conrad Hilbert LeBlanc's office is currently. There is still land back there. There's still developable property. And so when that happens is a question that we will present to you because it's ultimately your choice when that gets done. So the other highlighted items would be your trail repairs and improvements. Those were paid for under the capital reserve, not the gas tax. It was paid for $125,000 of ACOA money. We spent about $200 of that. So $75,000 of our own funds were invested in that project. And I hate to speak for Scott Surratt or Kyle, but we were extremely impressed with the work that was done there. Local contractor did an excellent job, really impressive. I think people are hopefully enjoying the result. As you know, with trails, you got to visit them, you got to revisit them, but this was a big one, and so we're happy to do that. Other projects of note that are not completed or continue would be, before I go on, I'll say things like the Mariner Center capital funding and the Splash Park projects. They were asking for money, and they got that. So that's completed. So it's not really our project, but it was our money. Other projects that of note, one of the biggest one is the Wedgeport wastewater project. So that one, we went to tender in the fall. That went poorly. And so we decided that the way we did it had to be adjusted. We did that. It's gone out to tender now. So you might see activity in the communities of Wedgeport and Plymouth. You may see some contractors, looking around, kind of poking around certain properties to see what they're dealing with there. We are aware that there's at least 2 companies that are interested in putting in a bid. And the bid would be for the whole thing, not for a section. Obviously, I have no comment on the budget. I don't know that. We don't know that. It's too early. What we hope for is the lowest price possible. We are concerned, and I've raised this before, on budget in COVID times. This is something that we would have gotten funding for in 2018. And then the pandemic hit. We couldn't do anything for 2 years. And then we had a hard time getting started. We are relatively confident that we'll have a project coming into this part of year and into the new. However, what it looks like is still up in the air. We can only tell you that when the tender is completed. We have engaged EXP as the engineers on the project, and they will be involved in that decision.
Councillor Boudreau.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just want to add, Alain, closing date for the tender. I just want to let the people know, the residents of Wedgeport, closing tender is February 23rd, I do believe. That's what I got from Kyle today.
Councillor Boudreau, you're correct. It may be extended depending on the needs of the bidders. Typically, we would give a small extension of time, especially when we know we're not going to have the work done on the 23rd of February. This time of year is a good time to go out because the work's not going to start right away.
Yeah.
So we have a tendency to give them a little bit more time if they need a little more. The more time they have, the more probability that it favors us from an analysis perspective. Hopefully, it cuts down the price.
Yeah.
My experience with contractors is the less time you give them, the more they guess, and they don't guess low.
Yeah, right.
They guess
Oh, yeah.
high. So
Yeah.
so let's cross our fingers,
Yeah.
right? So I'm not going to get into too much of the detail, but thank you for raising that. It could be into early March, not much longer than that.
Okay.
Again, the other project's I'm going to try to go quickly.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So the other project that was funded that has just begun in the planning stages is the West Pubnico Overflow and Controls. That will be completed in the next, 14 months. So as that work gets planned, once it gets planned, we're in the midst of that, it will be executed. Not a big project. I'm confident that will occur. I've said that before, but I'm confident. Asset management plan will be completed next year. And there are a couple other numbers here, like accessibility annual cost, $30,000. I would consider that a bit of a contingency. When we put that in, we weren't sure exactly what we would do on the accessibility plan this year. Some of that may be spent, but coming into the newer years, we're committed as a staff to give you a better number over the course of the next 5 to 6 years. Because as you know, you have the responsibility that the province lovingly gave to you to make your properties or as much accessible as possible by 2030. So right now we don't have I don't think we have an extension to that date, but it is manageable, and we do have funding avenues to help us get this done. But it will be an additional cost and burden to you. And I say cost and burden. What I really hope that we all come out of with this is investment and improvement, because this is actually about reducing barriers. It's not about, putting necessarily too much pressure on operators to do something. It's actually the right thing to do, but we're mandated to do that. So I'll stop there on the presentation. Told myself I wouldn't go far, but that happens. You do have a slight surplus at the end of cap reserve at the end of the year. Some of that is just project delays. So I guess my parting thought would be that the projects that are completed will come off as completed. Those that have started and not finished will continue into next budget. And then we'll look at the capital investment plan and your longer term capital plans. Take it all into account when we present to you a draft capital budget for the next year. I think that probably does it. unless there are any questions about any projects at all. Yeah.
Councillor Bork.
It's not a question, it's just a comment on the trail repairs and improvements. I've heard so many positive comments on it. I do walk the trails lately. I've been going back out. There's a lot of people on the trails. They're walking their dogs, and there's everybody on there. So it's very good. Everybody's happy with it. Hopefully we'll see some more going further towards Argyle. Hopefully the trails will be fixed in the future. So thank you to the staff, and thank you for this presentation. It's a lot of work from the staff, and I thank you very much.
Councillor Digdon.
Thank you. The money for the trails, that there was money we received, was it? That's what I thought.
Yes.
So it actually didn't come from the taxpayers.
75,000 of the 200 would have come from the previous surpluses of the
Okay.
taxpayers.
Yeah.
The 125,000, which is about 60%, did I do the math right there? Maybe 75%? Something like that, between 60 and 75%. You can do the math on it later, is a COA.
Yeah.
So that came from the federal government. So
Yeah.
that was not a direct burden on the municipal dollar.
Exactly. And the only thing I was going to say, what Councillor Bork said, is I hope we can find more money, or you people can find more money to keep going with it, you know, towards Argyle or towards all the way to Yarmouth, really. And having said that, kudos to the volunteers that are out there working on these trails. Like, I know this was a project and people were hired, but there's volunteers out there every week pretty well in Yarmouth County working on these trails. So thank you very much to them.
Yep. A question on extending the J Hatfield. Are we getting any requests for land there? And if we are, might be something that we could look at if we're going to extend. If we're going to get some construction going, whether it's housing or whatever, and it depends on us extending the road, I think maybe we should be looking at that quite seriously.
To answer the question you asked, are there requests? The answer is yes. And there are rather serious requests, not an offer on the table at this time. I can't disclose the details of that, of course. But I think more specifically, if we look at the housing and residential market that we're facing right now, time might be opportune, and that, again, that's a decision of council, right? Time might be opportune to spend the money sooner rather than later on the extension.
Yes.
If you had any questions about what that extension might look like for instance, I wouldn't predict that you'd pave it all the way down. That doesn't make a lot of sense, because I would say it's more residential in the back. And we have done residential in the past that we did not pave. So Ruel Gardner Lane is a perfect example. Quite a few very nice homes in the back there, but that road isn't paved as of yet. The services to be extended would be things like wastewater and perhaps power. Right. And there may be other initiatives that we could put in place, but we're too early to tell. But that extension goes quite a bit further. Like, we've got about 14 acres there.
Exactly.
So the opportunity is there.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Councillor Surratt, you had brought up about, you had a few questions, and we thought this might be the place.
Yes, I had a couple of phone calls, spoke to people about the assessment this year would be going up probably by 20 or 25%. And what the two residents that called me up on, they asked, if the assessment is going up, that means that their taxes will go up. One of the persons said it was going to be around $150 to $200 if that was the case according to the rate. So he said in the past that he's seen that when the assessment would be taking such a big jump, he said he's seen it, that the rates went down a bit to help them out. So anything in the planning or your budgeting that you're seeing or that you could speak on, I guess, so give an idea to the residents. Because, if you wouldn't mind.
For sure. So as a taxpayer in the municipality of Argyle, I saw that my taxes went up about 10 to 11%, or I think it was, it was close to 8%. But I would be subject to the cap on assessment. Yeah. Other people would be higher if they're not subject to the cap. The just so that everybody's aware, the PVSC, the assessment office, they said that the commercial tax increase is probably around 13% for Argyle. That's about average for the region. And the residential taxes is between 10 and 11%. Again, that's average to the region. There's no question that that's a significant increase. We're focusing on doing the pre-planning quicker than normal, with the question of where does this money go and how does it impact our bottom line. So the other side to that is I can't really commit to a recommendation on whether it's going to go up or down, left or right. But I would say that the considerations have to be both commercial and residential, because there are both. So commercial is not subject to the cap on assessment. Some residential properties are. Like people from away that don't live in the area may not have that cap, so they may see a huge increase on their assessment. Some of them are also dinged with provincial deed transfer taxes that Premier announced last year. So some of them are really getting hit a lot harder that way, but it's all a hard hit. The sad reality for us is that we're also hit by those increases. So what we don't know is what the increases are going to be to our own costs. Our bigger ones being education, RCMP, waste reduction, diversion, and there's also salary. I mean, there's a service component here as well that we have to consider. So not just our own salary and compensation internally, but also the compensation of the contractors that we're hiring. They too have to look at all these things coming in. Other factors might be, the increase of minimum wage and other things like that. So there's no question we're under it here on inflation. So every effort is going to be made to look at the expenses really, really hard to make sure, are we really needing that next year? That's why I'm saying we're going to start earlier. And we'll present options to you as we get closer to the year end. It's more work for us, but it's important work for all of us, because we don't want to just simply ignore the fact that our residents are facing some pretty unprecedented increases. The last piece I would say on this, and this work has already begun. When we debated the cap on assessment, the three political parties provincially, none of them wanted to touch it. They want to just leave it the way it was, because they saw it, well, I'll keep my opinions to myself maybe, but they didn't see it as practical. It does cause a lot of problems for us at the municipal level. But one of the things that they said when we were negotiating was this. They said, if we're going to get rid of the cap, you can't just reduce the rate and or you can't just take all the money and not reduce the rate. You got to be responsible. Okay, what does that mean? The biggest part of what they asked us to do was to look at our low income exemption policy. And that's what we've done. So the key is, okay, some of these taxes are going up, and they're going up. Obviously, they're going up for everyone, because we're not going to drop our rate 10, 20%, right? We're not going to do that. It is going up for people, and it has every year for us. Even if we didn't increase the rate, the assessment went up. So it wasn't an increased cost for them. So the point is okay, can we focus our effort on the people that need it the most? And that's where the low income policy, the improved low income policy, is going to be presented to you. So that's going to be a tool that you're going to have. So if the cost is going up really high, I get it. One of the things that we're going to combat that is say, okay, low income seniors, you qualify now. You've only qualified for this much, you're going to qualify for this much now. So while your taxes may or may not go down, the rebate is going to be impacting you positively. So we're going to try to focus the work on mostly low income individuals. Our thresholds were way too low. So we're working on that. So I realize that's not a reduction in tax, but for people who are low income, it's where they need it the most. It's a true reduction in their taxes. Lots of information.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
This is an ongoing thing. I'm sure councils across Nova Scotia are contemplating the same thing.
Just to follow, just a quick thing.
ahead.
Would I be right in saying that next year, as the assessment has gone up, because probably with the COVID and everything, will we be taking a hit as a municipality all across the province? A hit down in the next couple of years too? Although this is high now, probably it'll adjust too. Would I be right in saying that in question?
Ye- Yes, two things. One is the inflation is not going to happen forever.
That's right.
There's going to be a bubble and it's going to burst.
Yeah.
We don't know what that looks like. The other thing that we should be worried about is some of the expenses that we see this year
Yeah.
may not, they're always a year behind on being adjusted. School is one of your big ones. There's others. They're always based on the prior year assessment. So your uniform assessment is always a year behind. If you've had a huge increase, especially in comparison to other people, your expenses you may not see this year, but you'll darn well see it next year. So you have to anticipate that some of the costs, you may not see it right away, but you will. So if you reduce it because you don't think the costs are going to go up and then your costs go up, you may have to think about reversing that, and that's no good either. So we've always been very like, let's not move it very much. Some municipalities aren't like that. Some municipalities, it looks like a stock market, like it's up and down, and you know, pros and cons to that. But I think the consistency has been something that this council has definitely favored.
Thank you very much. Great.
Councillor D'Altremont.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I guess on that note, lowering our tax rate is easy. Putting it back up is hard. So we have to be mindful of that.
Exactly.
We've done it before, and it was easy to put it down, but it was hard to put it up. So
Okay. Okay. Any more questions? Did you have a question earlier that you wanted to ask? Okay, good. So if there's no other questions, we have to not approve these, but accept these. We need a motion to accept the financial reports. Moved by Councillor Digdon, seconded by Councillor Bork. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, carried. Next is for decision. And 7A is the asset retirement obligation policy. We had the first reading at the last meeting. Are there any questions on these? Are you all familiar with what that is? It was our assets that someday are going to have to be either removed or whatever. So we're obligated by the province to do this now. We have to set ourselves up, and it'll go into the auditors as well. So they will be looking for this. Are there any questions on this item? Oh, I got to look at this, I guess. Yeah, there's lots.
Thank you,
Councillor
Warden.
Sonia first.
I read through this the best I could, and I guess the question I have is that on co-ownership, are the rules the same? I guess one example would be the ownership of the windmill. I think that there's co-owners. So is that treated the same as?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay.
Part of this policy will be to consider the assets we know and love that are entirely our ownership, but we also have to consider the regional implications of things like Mariner Center, airport, wind turbines.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Donaldson.
I was just going to make the motion to accept this policy.
Okay, it's moved. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Surratt. Any more questions or discussions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, carried. 7B, This is the first reading. The maintenance and improvement of private roads. Now, I looked at that. Is this a policy that we had before and there's just a couple of amendments, or is this a brand new?
Correct. It's an amendment to an existing bylaw.
Okay. So if you want to kind of explain what it is, and then we're going to ask for questions, but this is just for the first reading. We'll be dealing with this at the next meeting, but you can ask questions on this now. Are there any questions?
It's just a reminder to the council that this amendment was based on the fact that we had approved a grant to an organization or an association under this bylaw. And what we said was, well, that's all well and good, but we need some better direction as to how we would deal with future requests. As part of your decision, you also moved for an amendment to the bylaw, and this is the amendment. It's very simple. It's very to the point, and we would obviously we're going to want to recommend it when you're ready to have it approved. Right now, I think it's first reading.
Okay. If there's no questions, we need a motion for the first reading, to accept the first reading. Moved by Councillor Boudreau, seconded by Councillor Sonia. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, carried. Next one is to repeal group insurance. And again, we've discussed this, and the reason we're repealing this one is because there's a new insurance group, and there's a policy on that one. And this one here no longer doesn't have to exist. And I think we've discussed this at the last meeting, and we need a motion to repeal this one.
I'll make a motion.
Moved by Councillor Bork, seconded by Councillor Digdon. Any questions on that at all? You're all aware of what it is. There's no questions. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, carried. The next one is emergency fund. There's a request here where the funds are getting very low, and we expect the request to start increasing. Seem to be seeing that. And the request here, the recommendation is to take 14,000, no, there's 14,400 remaining in the community litter cleanup. Apparently we didn't have as many. And you know, when you look, and I think the reason is the people that were doing that were seniors, were clubs, and a lot of them have given up on even applying for that. So there's 14,000, and I guess what we're looking for is since we're probably going to have Experience of Argyle, but it won't be until the fall if we do have one, and I think there's going to be requests prior to that. And since there's money left in that, it would be a good place to take some money and put it in the emergency fund. And the suggested motion is to move that council approve the transfer of 4,000 from the community litter cleanup program to the Argyle Emergency Fund for the period ending March 31st, 2023. That would have to be done before the end of the fiscal year. Any questions or? There's no questions. Councillor Digdon.
Yes, the only thing I was going to say, when you look at now when people apply for these funds, and that $500, and that now is only getting you a little over a quarter tank of fuel.
Yeah.
So it's going to be hard. It's definitely going to be hard. It is hard. There's no saying it's not. So I definitely make the motion that we transfer 4,000, from the community litter cleanup program to the Argyle Emergency Fund for the period ending March 31st, 2023.
Okay, is there seconded by Councillor Surratt. Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary minded, carried. There's another motion, and what we need is, we need a policy. Really, I don't think we have much of a policy. Do we have a policy on that at all? On how we
We have
handle
a
that?
loose procedure on it.
Yes.
And we experience challenges on almost every request.
Okay,
One of the biggest things that we don't do well, that we want to do better, is that we don't check with other funding avenues to see whether those people in need are accessing everything that they should.
right.
So to Digdon's point, 500 doesn't get you much, right? So maybe that needs to be looked at. Maybe we need to examine what it would look like if we combined with some other food banks. We've did tremendous fundraising with a local food bank and got a bunch of money for food and fuel. And so to do things independently of the people who do it well, we'd have to re-examine that, because we all have bleeding hearts for people who need it. But then if we're not working with other people who are funding them, there could be, we don't want to make it harder for people that are having a hard time, and we don't want to duplicate, and we certainly don't want to be in a position where people are paying twice for something.
That's right.
We have resources here for that they apply for heating fuel rebates for people all the time, et cetera. We just don't have it connected well. That's why I'm suggesting a policy be done.
As far as fuel, there are organizations right now that are open for people who need fuel. The point that Councillor Digdon made, the $500 doesn't give you much oil, but I think what's happening sometimes is, number one, the trucks now won't stop for less than, it was 300, and I think it's 450 right now before they even stop, And I think some people, what they do is they will go to the food bank as well to get more over and above the 500 that we gave, and you can't blame them because 500 doesn't give them a whole lot. So, but there are organizations. There is a fuel bank in town that covers. I say it's in town, but it covers Yarmouth County. It's not. Yeah, it's county. Yes, and in the past, I've had people. I've received some fuel for some people in my district on that a couple of years ago. So it's there. I don't know how much they have and what the process is at this time. So what we need, I think having a policy is a good idea. So perhaps we need a motion to instruct the CAO to present policy for the Argyle Emergency Fund by April 30th, 2023. That's moved by Councillor Bourque, seconded by Councillor Sonia. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, carried. That's what we have for decision. Correspondence, building official recommendations. And I think that's not our recommendations. It came to us, I guess, from the province, what they're recommending as far as training and whatever else. And online request system, complaints management policy. Are there any questions on that? I see our deputy CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. What you have attached there is the complaint management policy. So the council approved that, I believe, a year, maybe 2 years ago. But what I want to talk to you about tonight is like the second part of the complaint system. So we want to introduce something to residents that can connect with the municipality. So we want to set up a we're going to call it not a
we're gonna call it a request system, not a complaint system, because that's kind of negative tone, right? So it's a request system. So we're gonna set it up on our Facebook page that folks could go on and click on our Facebook page, the request system. And once you click on the request system, you'll get to an application form, which is now on the screen currently now. And it basically states on this application, it's fairly simple to fill out, but it's not for wastewater emergencies. It's clearly there. If it is, you dial that number. If you have a wastewater emergency right now, dial that number. So this is like for dangerous, unsightly, illegal dumping, noise or nuisance or whatever. This is what a resident would use. Again, I'm going to go through it fairly simple to see. You just put your name, your address, your email address, phone number. Then you'd give a brief description of what the issue is. So let's say it's illegal dumping. The resident would put the information there, illegal dumping. Description would be maybe the civic number or as close to as the civic number to the legal dumping. Can also make some suggestion on how we could improve the situation. Because it could be, I don't know, maybe the soccer field in Westport is not mowed. Maybe they just tell us to mow the field because there's a tournament or something. And then the next category says choose the category that of your request. So if it's a wastewater issue, you could click wastewater. If it's illegal dumping, you could choose illegal dumping. And I'll explain a little bit more why that's important. If you go further down, you'll see there's a map. The resident will have to click, if it's in Wetchport, they can kind of click on Wetchport and it will bring up like a little red dot. Appreciate the work here, Scott. Thank you very much. So it kind of indicates to us where the issue is. And then can add some images too. So he could actually, if it's illegal dumping, he could be there, take a picture with his phone and attach it there to the website so we could actually see the pictures. So it's fairly easy to do for a resident to send us information, and then they would submit. When the residents hit submit, it creates what we call the ticket. So the ticket will go to, depending on what that category is. Again, those categories are up there. So if it's garbage and litter, it might go to Chantal. It will go to our bylaw officer. If it's a recreation, it'll go to our recreation director. If it's wastewater, it will go directly to our director of public works or operations. So it's kind of immediate. You get the ticket, so you get an email that's sent to one of our staff that deals with it. He has to deal with it based on the policy that we have. So you have in the policy, it basically states that staff has 5 days to respond to the resident. And we could kind of respond and say, once we've responded, we actually can go into the ticket and say, spoke to the resident on February 1st, talked about the incident, maybe February 2nd, talked to Councillor Digdon about the issue because it's in his district, February 4th, solved the problem. I don't know, clean the illegal site or whatever. So everything would be documented on this particular ticket. So there's two things why we want to introduce this. One is it gives our residents a tool to use to give us some feedback or request information or whatever, can share, and it can be done right on the computer. And two, it gives us an opportunity to track information that we can use to share with council. And one of them, I think I heard it at this table before, is like, so how many nuisance complaint have we received last year? And we can probably find that out, but we need to actually go dig in the file. Now we can run a report and say there was 5 in Wedgeport. And maybe we say we could run reports and share with council, and that's the plan of this system, is that we'll be able to share this however we want to do it, monthly or every 3 months and maybe see like maybe illegal dumping is happening on Sureds Island. Maybe there's 5 illegal dumps, so maybe we need to do more, be a little more proactive in monitoring the system on Sureds Island or putting signs or doing something. So it's gonna give us some information that we don't really have right now. We do, but you need to kind of go get it, but this system will help us to track it. And we'll be able to share with you, counselors, and we could actually break it down into your districts. So it's gonna be information, I think that's gonna be helpful for us to help plan and for you also to. We are using it now. We are using the system now internally. So we're sending tickets to our director of operations. Like, let's say it could be something like, need to go plow the snow. He would kind of send a ticket to one of our operation wastewater guys that plows. And he would then kind of do the job and go back into the ticket and say, done. So our director of ops already knows it's done. And that's how they kind of communicate right now through the ticket system internally. So we are using it now because we wanted to test it to make sure that it works before we send it out to our residents. Not only that, it is being used by the municipality of Barrington, very similar system. And I've talked to the CAO there and he says it works really well for the folks there. Yarmouth has a system, but not the same as us. It's a little bit different. Right now, we are still, it's not live and we're waiting to go by, we're hoping to have this up and running by the end of February, but there's still a few little bugs that we need to tweak in the system. And it's not really bugs, it's actually just changing the wording. We just wanted to look a little more professional. So we're making those changes. I think that's as much as I can share at this point. Is there any questions around that?
Councillor Saunier.
Thank you. Sounds good, Scott. It's completely confidential, right? Someone who puts a request in.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, and what if I don't have a computer? How do the residents get this information?
I'm glad you asked that, Councillor Sonia, because I wanted to share that information before. So if you don't have a computer, you can still call in here if you had a complaint with our bylaw officer and connect with our bylaw officer, and he'll enter the information for that particular resident. And I want to also share that you guys get calls, I'm sure, from your residents to put a complaint or asking for information. If you know the constituent, you can probably tell him that he can go on the computer. If you know he has a computer, you know, but you may have an irate one that, look, just give me the information, I'll take it down. And you yourself could actually go into the computer and do it for them. We want to log in everything so that we can capture every concern that our residents have, because if I don't put it all in there, the report that I'm providing to you is not complete. That's what we're telling our staff, is that every complaint or every request needs to be into the system so that we can capture and keep tracking of it. However, the policy, if you read the policy, you can't be anonymous. You need to be able to put your name on the ticket of your request, because it says there that we're not going to deal with it. So, and I think that might be an issue for counselors, because you may know the resident and the resident may have a valid reason why he doesn't want to put his name on there. So what we're saying to you, and again, we're looking for feedback, is that maybe Councillor Surratt will investigate the issue that's going on Surratt's Island. Go look, maybe it's an illegal dumping. So, yeah, it's illegal dumping. If Councillor Surratt feels comfortable with that, he could actually put in the request and put your name, Councillor Surratt, there as the one actually requesting the information. It could be your request. But you need to be comfortable with that, because if it would ever go on a court of law, we're going to go back to Councillor Surratt and say, by the way, you're the one who put in the ticket. So confidentiality can be an issue, yes.
Yeah,
But
well,
that's how we can kind of deal with it.
To that point, I had a person ask me if it was confidential, because some people are a little reluctant to have their name out there if it's not. And if they just think that it might be, they probably won't complain or won't request whatever is being needed.
It can only be kept confidential to a certain point. If it does go in the court of law, and I'll look at the CAO to add.
I was told that was not so.
It may, that name may have to come out, but I'll ask if you have anything to add there. CAO.
Well, in the rare occasion, that, oh boy, yeah, okay, let's do that. In the rare occasion that you go to court, so in the 18 years I've been here, I've only seen one case escalate to that point. So it's not, first of all, it's not common. So anybody who complains, their name would be kept confidential, 100%. If it goes to the court of law, it may be required in the court of law to disclose the complainant. The nature of the complaint may or may not be something that has to be disclosed in the court of law. That can't be avoided whether we use this system or another system. So whatever the, so, and the other, I think the key here is people are going to say, I'm not putting my name in, but I have a complaint. That's just going to be thrown right out the window, because we all have the experience of having a faceless complaint on social media, and it's not always conducive to appropriate response on our part. So that is a very common response from many municipalities. I just want to make sure that it's not just something we're doing. The only other thing I'd say about that is that oftentimes if something goes to court like that, there is there's the likelihood of it only being one complainant is quite low. So this doesn't make people feel necessarily that much better, but if you've got a court case and that your name is going to be disclosed as the complainant, it might make you feel a little bit easier if there were 18 other complainants or 2 or 3. We can't assure 100% that wouldn't happen, but it would be extraordinarily rare. So if something, so just as a practical example, I'm going to complain about, Councillor Sonia's front lawn, and I'm going to put my name in, and Councillor Sonia says, what the heck, I got a complaint from somebody, I need to know who it is. That will not be disclosed. That is not the business of the person that received the complaint, and hopefully the resolution will be amicable, and it often is about 80% of the time. Oftentimes, if they get raised, sometimes it's just, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that, and I'm going to change that. So I know there's still some discomfort there around the anonymity. If people are really uncomfortable giving their names, they can still go to their counselor, and the counselor can represent them on their behalf. But what you have to understand is that you're the one submitting the complaint. So it would not be appropriate for a counselor to say, I'm complaining on behalf of someone else. That does not suffice. It has to be something that you agree to. So if somebody complained to you about something and you went to that site and said, oh my goodness, I guess there's a problem, then that complaint would be yours and not that person's. So you will have accepted that responsibility. But as a resident of the municipality, you have every right to complain on your own behalf.
But that's not new with this policy.
No.
It's always been like that. I brought a complaint
Correct.
from someone, and our officer said, I need the name. I need a name on this, and she doesn't want to give me the name, then I can't act on it, is what he told me.
Some of those regulations are, associated with the bylaw enforcement certifications and all those things that are outside of our powers, right? They're outside of our rules. But yes, it can cause problems. I hope that answers your question. I realize.
If I may, I handled one complaint, and when I brought it in, the person who complained to me, I brought in the complaint, and the enforcement officer, I said to the officer, do you want the person's name? He said, no.
So in that case, it's likely that that person used your name in that instance.
I was never asked to use my name, but he said he didn't want the complainer's name. So that was put the complainer out of the hot water, so to speak. Things were handled properly and things were.
Right. Yeah. That particular example, I'm not sure of the instances of that, but that would be an unusual instance for sure.
Unusual, yeah.
But I mean, there may be a circumstance that I'm not prepared to explain appropriately to you, but it would be interesting to know what happened there.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Boudreau.
I pretty much had the same issue as Ted. I think it's great program, but the problem is people want to stay anonymous, and most of them don't want to make the call or submit. And everything's going to fall pretty much on the counselor. That's the way I look at it, because nobody wants to call and make the complaint. That's my issue. And Ali explained it really good. I understand the way it works, but a lot of issues are going to fall on the counselor if we want anything done.
Yeah, and they probably are now,
Yeah.
because if people want to stay confidential,
Yeah.
even without this system or not, it's still the
Yeah.
same process, right?
Yeah.
And so most of it still lands on the council's
Yeah.
response, unfortunately.
Well, we're going to have big shoulders.
Okay. Councillor Surratt.
Yes, it was, some of the questions I had have been asked around here or spoke by Deputy Warden, Deputy CAO or the CAO. Just probably one point I'll make is, you know, let's face it, if you have a problem with your next door neighbor, you know, it's hard for that person to go and put your name up, you know, and I see the point. You know, if it's somebody that's, you know, lives in Westport, has a problem with something that happened in Morris Island, that's a different story by far. But next door, I can understand why they wouldn't, in that case, why they wouldn't want to put their name.
Exactly.
But I've had to put my name a few times on a complaint, and because I knew it had to be resolved, and like Councilor Boudreau said, you have to have big shoulders, and it's not always nice. Thank you.
Councillor Donaldson.
Yeah, just a quick question. The majority of my complaints is provincial issues, right? And I'm sure the rest of you have the same problem. There's no place on that form, but I'm sure there'll be people will find a way in the comments to put provincial complaints or issues in there, right? Is there some way that you guys will be forwarding this onto the MLA and letting the people know that it's not a municipal issue?
Yeah, good question. We'll definitely respond to that resident to let them know that it's not a municipal issue and to redirect them through the MLA's office. Yes.
Because, yeah, that's, like, they want to know it's gone somewhere.
Yeah.
Just on that point, the data is all going to be collected by us.
Yeah.
So not only will you be able to see all the complaints that come in for DOT, so will your MLA. So they'll see that it's not 1 or 8, it might be 18. They'll see that. So even if the online option, when you go in and you make that complaint, it actually will tell you, hey, wait a minute, that's actually a provincial matter. Here's the phone number that might best help you with that situation. So that'll be an automatic response, but they still may put in the complaint.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then the MLA will also receive
Yeah,
it.
in all honesty, the majority of the public out there don't know all the provincial
Right.
or municipal issues, right? It's the same way with their tax bill. They just know it goes up. They don't look into the assessment or the tax rate. I mean, it went up, right? So I'm talking the majority of the people. There's just people that follow municipal politics and provincial politics. But anyhow, that was just all I had to say on that, to see if it was going to go any further than here, if it needed
Right,
to.
it would. And I would say that sorry for jumping there, but I would also say that the issues of confidentiality are a lot less of an issue on those matters, because it has to do with a complaint to the department, not to your neighbor. I think, you know, obviously we would take that into account when we would assess a complaint coming in. Most people are happy to put their name in if the ditching isn't done, right? It's when you're having to complain about your neighbor's mess, that's when it gets a little complicated. And you know what? We have to navigate that as council and as staff today. We still do. The whole point of this is to have it all in one place so that you can track it and you don't have to wait to hear. You can track all that stuff yourself as a council. I mean, you're not going to see the details, but you'll see the reporting.
Counselor Digdon.
Thank you. The only thing I was gonna say, as far as sometimes like neighbor to neighbor, sometimes just a talk between both neighbors as a counselor, it's happened, it's worked for me, there's no saying it hasn't, and some people just don't know that they're not supposed to have 3 or 4 old cars, in the yard and stuff like that, so you just kind of tell them, and, we want to work with you. And as far as a counselor, I know they say about having broad shoulders or whatever, but I had complaints down home, multiple complaints about an incident, and it got lawyers involved in everything. But as a counselor, I felt for the people living around that problem, that it was my place to stick up for these people. And if it would have ever had to go to court, I would have been more than, comfortable going to court on their behalf, because a lot of work was put into it by a lot of people, and our CAO and a lot of people put work into it. We got it resolved, but it was quite a little problem before it got resolved.
Okay.
But now I got a bunch of people happy with me and one that don't talk to me, so that's all right. So I'll live with
The
that.
plus is better than the minus. I
That's
hope.
right. That's right. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if there's no other questions, I think it's a great idea myself. And like Councillor Donaldson said, I may not be getting as many calls about the potholes. but I don't know about everybody else. If I get a complaint about a highway issue, I convey that to the department myself, but I should also do it to, and I never include RMLA, and I should, because that's where the complaint should go. Yeah. Is that right? Okay. Yeah, I usually call the department itself. So. Okay, so that takes care of that one.
So I realize that was for information, but one of the things that we might be committed to do, because there have been concerns raised around how do we navigate this, and we can certainly bring in our bylaw enforcement officer at a future meeting to just have an open conversation about, from a practical perspective, how is this going to work, right? And you can have a private conversation with him, not necessarily about specific examples, but like I'm sure he'd be happy to come in and say, hey guys, this is how, or guys and girls, this is how things ought to work, and this is how I interpret it. I think he would be quite pleased to do that. That might alleviate some of your concerns. May add more of them, I don't know, but we can do that for you if you wish.
Yep. Okay, good idea, for sure. Okay, financial request. We have one from Club Social des Îles funding. There's a memo here. This one here is, is this your community? No, that's your request. Yes, if you want to explain this one.
Yes,
One minute.
that's the
You're-
Club Social des Îles.
Can you press your,
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you. Too much involved.
there you go.
Thank you, Gordon. Yes, so what's happened, as you saw on the financial request, there was a request made for that, for funding for their generator that they've requested at $2,500 more. So I had suggested that to the Club Social that we could get a $500 district community grant, which is coming up next on the list. But then they would only need to request $2,000. But what had happened, actually, what happened, as you saw, as you see in the request, there was a generator needed because of the heat pumps. The heat pumps, actually, let me start from the beginning. We had a fire inspector come in. The fire inspector from the municipality came in, and inspection hadn't been done, I don't know for how many years, 7 or 8 years. So when the inspector came in, he picked up that the oil tank was something like 8 or 10 years over the due date. So it made it about 18 years old, and the tanks are after 10 has to be replaced. Furthermore, he looked at the piping for the chimney. That was rusted out, and he failed that. Also, he looked into the chamber of the furnace, which we were using as secondary as our secondary heat for insurance purposes. If you have heat pumps, you need secondary heat for your insurance. Well, when our fire inspector looked inside and he saw that the chamber was rusted out, or getting pretty well rusted out, we ended up, having to take the furnace out, which was, he requested we take the furnace out. Well, the insurance came back to us and said, if you don't have a secondary heat, we won't insure you. So they gave us a date to get it remedied, and we did. I say we, the club decided to apply for what was I going to say? I lost my train of thought. For the generator. Thank you. Sorry about that. Well, looking for a generator, they went to see George King, and George King just said, if you need a generator, you need something that's going to be big enough to handle those 4 heat pumps that you have, which was a 24 kilowatt, and they went with the propane type, which was suggested by George King. So if the heat pumps come on, you've got some other stuff going on in the club. As a comfort center, you need this size of generator. That's why that size of generator was decided, and not maybe a smaller one or maybe a smaller gas one. They suggested that 24 kilowatt propane. So having said that, they had decided to put it underneath the steps, which was on the side of the hall, the generator and the propane tanks. Well, when the company came up from Irving and said, you know what, your generator has to go to the front where the pavement is, because your electrical panel box is just straight above. So we prefer to have the generator up front at the road. Well, that brought about an issue with, we have to put bollards, or like we have at the propane tank that we had in Tuscan, those yellow posts to protect so nobody backs into that generator to ruin it or whatever. But they're called bollards, and those bollards come out to about $2,500. That's what increased the pricing. The club is putting $4,481 in with that generator grant we got from $17,000. To make the long story, they applied for a grant, $17,000, thought they had enough money with the $17,000, which they had. That they were putting $4,400 in, $17,000 grant, $21,000. But when the bollard situation came up, when the generator had to be shifted, it certainly presented, we were short of money. So I said I can give you a district community grant of $500 to release that pressure of the $2,500 to $2,000. So I guess when it comes down to it, that's the request you're asking for the $2,000, and we don't have that money. The club doesn't have that money. It'll put him in quite a financial stress. So, I guess if the fire inspection had been not done, but it had to be done, we know that hadn't been done, but it kind of put the club in the bind. So it comes down to, at the end of the day, you've all read the memo, and the memo says that it doesn't qualify because the club has had a $10,000 grant last year, if I remember correctly. So anyhow, we're down to asking council if there's something that can be done. That's where we're at. With no insurance, with the insurance being going to be canceled this spring, it puts us in kind of a bind. And let's face it, if the power goes off and you don't have those heat pumps to heat up the place, the furnace is out, the tank is out now because we were required to remove it. It puts it in quite a predicament. Anyhow, I just thought I'd bring that up and see what council thought.
Okay.
I know there's policies, and we should follow policies. I realize that.
So I guess what it says is if we are to, the conclusion is if the 2,000 funding for the subsequent year does not meet our policy of funding, should council wish to approve a request of this nature, it will require an amendment to its current policy on community halls. That's basically where we stand. Okay, Councillor Donaldson.
Yes, I'm in favor of giving this money to the club. Primarily, the only reason is because it's a comfort center. And it could be a very important asset if the power goes out for any length of time in the general area of, is it Amirus Hill Hall?
It's the Club and Sweats.
The Club and Stretch.
And it would come from Amir's Hill
Yeah,
to get people to comfort check.
So, yeah, I can't see no reason why we can't do this. I'm sure our LN News can find $2,000 somewhere in that surplus we heard about tonight. So I'm gonna make a motion that we give them the $2,000.
But you have to realize that if we do, we have to, it looks like we're going to have to amend the policy, though.
I'd like to second that motion, by the way. So
It's
therefore
moved-
we can
It's moved and
discuss.
seconded,
Yeah.
yes.
I'm looking at it more as emergency funding for the comfort center, not to do anything to do with our grants or community grants, the hall grants. It's for that reason only that I'm making this motion, because of the comfort center in case of an emergency.
Is there anywhere in the EMO, I know it's not my turn, but could throw this in, EMO, like emergency funding? Was there ever a line, like Danny, you remember the Hubbard's Point got $5,000 for their generator? And I'm not picking a Hubbard's Point, I'm just saying, was that an emergency grant where that money came from? Do you remember? Because I don't know where the money came
I'm
from.
not sure where the money
Yeah,
came from.
I mean, it was well worth it,
It
don't
might
get me
have been,
wrong.
it might have been with the hall grants.
Yeah, that's right.
That, the 10,000, or there was 15 at the first couple of years. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's where that came from or not. Okay, I
Thank you.
have Councillor D'Entremont.
I guess Councilor Donaldson and Councilor Surratt kind of covered what I was going to ask. Since it is a comfort center, I wouldn't be opposed to financing it if we can find the appropriate funds in whatever appropriate place it is. So,
Okay,
thank you.
Councillor Saulnier.
Thank you, Warden. I too am in favor of helping Surratt's Island with this. However, I think we have to be careful, especially if we go in amending this policy, because I think if we start amending the policies for every reason that comes about, it becomes pliable, becomes kind of bending the rules every time we have a crisis or an issue. So I'd be careful with that. But at the same time, I've had personal experience, and so has Councillor Surratt, with comfort zones or centers. And we had tragedies in both our villages. And it's sad to say, but these tragedies bring people together. And these comfort centers are places for these people to gather and heal sometimes. And it is very heartening to see these things come together with the food and everything they bring. And it's a well-founded thing to have in a community. And I think if there's a will, we should be able to find some financing for this place. And again, I just a little bit leery on amendments, because we could be doing the same amendment for something different next week. But emergency fund might be the way to go. Anyhow, thank you.
Am I good? The question to support or not support is absolutely council's to make. Our role is to make policy in the best way possible to try to manage and control the operations. However, that being said, policies cannot anticipate every situation. And in this situation is certainly unique in the sense that, what may or may not have been mentioned was the fact that the comfort center used to be at the fire hall and was shifted to the Islands District. I know that to be factual because it was actually our remote coordinator who made that decision at the time that the generator was was to be applied for by the Islandton District. And so he came to the conclusion that, look, from an accessibility perspective, from all the perspectives of like actually having people enter the building and be taken care of, it made no sense, or certainly made a lot more sense to have it at the Islandton District rather than have it at the fire department itself. I will say that. I would also say that if it is your intention to support this, I would recommend that you do so in the new fiscal year, not because you don't have the money this year. You do. Money is not an issue on this one. The issue is, can we get the policy written correctly so that we maybe more better represent your intentions here? So, the policy is very clear. If you've gotten $10,000 as a club, you're done. You shouldn't, the only option to get money is that one. So there is no room for exceptions. The only exception is if you went in for 5,000 and you needed another 5 later on, you could get that as long as other clubs got it first. So this is a rather unique circumstance. Let us write the policy for you. You can today make the decision to support. That is entirely up to you, but may I suggest that you would do that in the fiscal 23-24 to give us enough time to change the policy to do it appropriately. So if that is, and of course, the rejection is always an option of this council, but I'm not hearing that today. The only other thing I'd say is on the district community grant, the islands they've already asked under a different venue, so that would also have to be deferred in the new year. So again, same situation. It's not the funding, it's the policy that might be just, restricting you from now to March, but after April, Islands and District would be entitled to their $500 district community grant as well. So it's just because they've already had one in the early part of the year, they can't ask twice. They can't ask twice, I guess. So that's all I wanted to say. And nothing to do with your decision to support or not support. Just telling you what we need to do to change the policy to support if you're favoring the motion.
Okay. So if we're going to wait until the next fiscal year, they would be eligible to get that money through the not the district community, but through the branch organizations.
Because they're a club, they're only allowed to apply under the community hall policy.
Okay.
So they would not be eligible, which is why we have to change that particular policy to make an exception, because that's the only place they could actually get that funding.
Okay, because I thought if they could, then we could do that without changing any policy, but they don't fall under that one either. So, well, what's the, we have a motion, it's been moved and seconded. So if there's no other question, I'm going to call for the question. And as our CEO said, it'll probably end up in the next fiscal year, which is after March 31st, okay?
So does the motion have to reflect that?
It should,
It should.
yeah. Yeah. We're going to go that way rather than go to amendments and whatever, so. Yeah, okay, so all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded? Carried. The next one is Club Social des Îles 500. There's also a memo. Okay, they've already received, you already explained that
I think
one.
it's the same issue, so.
That's the same issue. So we can't approve this one now.
We couldn't, but did the motion say 2,500?
No, it says 2,000.
Okay.
The 500 is a separate community grant. Okay, but there was nobody showing here. Now I see. Okay, sorry.
Okay, to speak on that, certainly our CEO said it right. It was certainly my mistake. I asked him to apply for a $500 district community grant, not thinking the events committee of the club had already applied for 500 and got it. I was thinking because it's a committee, it wasn't the club, but they're a committee of the club, and the CAO certainly pointed that out to me, and it was my mistake. I didn't pick that up when he told me, I read it. So they'll be applying in the next year. Thank
Okay.
you. So no motion or nothing.
No motion on that one. Oh, Counselor Digdon, you had your light. Okay, I thought maybe I had. The next one, okay, Twin Village Social Club. And that's also from Counselor Surratt.
Yes, I'd like to give $500 to the Twin Village Social Clubs for some work done under the ceiling in the walking cooler.
Moved, seconder? Moved and seconded by Counselor Bork. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, carried. Another one for the Sluice Point Betterment Committee, and that's also Counselor Surratt.
I'm on a roll. Anyhow, having said that, the Sluice Point Betterment Committee, that's the group that is putting up the sign, the community sign, those nice signs that we've been putting up all over the municipality. And they're asking for $500 to finish some of the work, some of the ground workroom, pay some of the poles that they've been bought. And there's also a light that was purchased, so we're applying for that. That's what they're applying for, so I moved to give them $500.
Moved and seconded by Counselor Donaldson. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, carried. I have, next one is mine, and it's for the Abrams River, the Abrams River Schoolhouse Society. And what they're doing there, they're renovating as much as they can. And there's continuous work, and the request is to help towards the renovations as well. I can't make that motion if someone wants to make it. Move. Okay, moved by Councillor Donaldson, seconded by Councillor D'Entremont. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, carried. I have Radiothon sponsorship. Yeah, you have another one. Yeah, you'll be there. Did we discuss that at the last meeting? We sponsored this, I think, almost every year, don't we?
We have sponsored it in the past.
In the past. And the way it is, there's platinum 5,000, gold 3,000, silver 2,000, bronze 1,500. The We Care support is $750. And there's another one, We Care Power Hour support. Oh, okay, no, we can, 600. There's different types of sponsorship that we can give. So again, where does that come from? If we were to sponsor that?
That would come out of the sponsorship.
Okay.
Looking at the CAO.
Yeah, I mean, depends on how big it is, whether it's gonna blow it or not. But yeah, that's probably where it would come from.
So what is the wish of council? Okay, let me see here. You wanted to make a motion on something?
No, I want to know how much room we have in our sponsorship.
Okay.
To make a donation.
And I was wondering the same thing, how much we sponsored before us.
Okay, I'm gonna turn some mics on here. I have a whole bunch. So I have Calvin first.
Go ahead, I pressed my button for my request, and then we got onto this, so sorry about that.
I have Councillor. Okay, I have Councillor Surratt.
We gave $1,000 last year. I looked it up, and I make a motion that we give $1,000 like this year.
Okay. Councillor Digdon.
I can turn my
Mic off now.
And I have Councillor Bork.
I just wanted to know how much.
So we need
money
a seconder. We did.
Richard.
That was seconded.
Yeah.
So it was seconded by Councillor Donaldson. So the motion is to give $1,000 to the Radiothon. All in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary minded? Carried. So is that going to deplete our funds?
I don't know, my computer can't load faster than you guys can decide. I just, like the green thing is just going like this. I will get you that information.
I looked, and there was 5 or 6 out of the 7 that are here beside
There were
me.
7 people who wanted to talk and the motion happened in 4 seconds.
They all had the same question. Okay, next one is Councillor D'Entremont.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. This is a district community grant from le village historique acadien de la Nouvelle-Écosse. Le projet, c'est un nouveau four pour la cuisine. So I guess the project is a new oven for their kitchen. And they are asking for financial help of $500.
So that's moved and seconded by Councillor Digdon. All in favor? Aye. Contrary minded? Carried. That takes care of our grants. Oh, I have
For the
Councillor
next, for the next item on the agenda.
The next item on the agenda?
Number 10.
Oh, number 10. I'm sorry, I thought you had a request for, okay, agenda topics for next meeting.
I already had brought forward about Recreation Department was talking about their volunteer banquet. So I want to know when that was going to come on the agenda because the department, we had our meeting, Recreation, and we want to know, Jeanette wanted to know when we're going to decide what council would want. If we're going to move forward with what we've been doing the last 2 years with the volunteers, or are we going to have a banquet, or so I think we have to decide what we're going to do so she can plan because that will be coming up fast enough.
So you want to deal with that today?
No.
You want to put it on there for our
I
next
want to
meeting?
make, yeah,
Okay. That'll be on the agenda for next meeting.
thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any question period? None. So we need a motion to go in camera. Moved by Councillor Saulnier, seconded by Councillor Boyd.